The most chilling aspect of this story isn't that an entire family was brutally murdered in their own home. It's that the killer stayed for hours afterward, eating their ice cream, using their computer, and sleeping on their couch while their bodies lay nearby. Viewer discretion is advised. But before we explore today's disturbing case, if you're fascinated by unsolved mysteries and true crime, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so you don't miss our new uploads. We upload new videos 2 to 3 times every week. Now let's begin. December 30th, 2000 was supposed to be a night of celebration and preparation in the quiet Tokyo suburb of Setagaya. The end of the year is one of the most momentous occasions in Japan, a chance to celebrate a fresh start and welcome new beginnings. For the Miyazawa family, it was a frosty winter's night when 8-year-old Nina, her younger brother 6-year-old Rei, and their parents, 44-year-old Mikio and 41-year-old Yasuko, were at home preparing for the festivities. The family lived in a modest 2-story house in the Kamiso Shigaya district, a peaceful residential area where violent crime was virtually unheard of. But the Miyazawa family would never celebrate that new year. All 4 were brutally murdered on December 30th, 2000, in a crime that shocked Japan and began what would become one of the country's most baffling and disturbing unsolved cases. What makes this case particularly haunting isn't just the senseless violence. It's the extraordinary amount of evidence the killer left behind and the bizarre behavior he exhibited after committing the murders. The discovery came the following morning, December 31st, when Mikio's mother, Setsuko, arrived to check on the family. She lived next door and had been trying to reach them by phone without success. When she entered the house using her spare key, though she would later express uncertainty about whether the door had actually been locked, she was confronted with a scene of unimaginable horror. Mikio had been stabbed to death on the first floor. Yasuko and 8-year-old Nina were found upstairs, both having been brutally stabbed multiple times. Most heartbreaking of all was little Rei, who had been strangled to death. The medical examiner would later determine that Yasuko had died while trying to protect her daughter, her body found positioned as if shielding Nina from the attacker. The brutality was shocking even to experienced investigators. The family had been beaten and stabbed well after death, suggesting a level of rage that seemed almost personal. But what investigators discovered next would transform this from a horrific family murder into one of the most perplexing cases in Japanese criminal history. The killer hadn't simply committed the murders and fled. Instead, he had made himself completely at home in the house where 4 people lay dead. For up to 10 hours after the killings, the murderer had treated the Miyazawa home as his own personal refuge. He used the family's computer, browsing the internet for several hours. He raided their refrigerator, eating at least 4 ice creams from their freezer. He used their bathroom without flushing the toilet, leaving behind fecal matter that would later provide crucial DNA evidence. Most disturbing of all, he had taken a nap on their couch, leaving behind bodily fluids and hair samples. The killer had even changed clothes, abandoning his blood-stained garments and taking items from Mikio's wardrobe before finally leaving the house sometime before dawn on December 31st. The evidence left behind was staggering in both quantity and quality. The killer had left his DNA everywhere: on the computer keyboard, on ice cream containers, in the bathroom, on the couch where he slept. His fingerprints were found throughout the house. He had abandoned the murder weapon, a knife that investigators determined had been purchased in nearby Kanagawa Prefecture. Most remarkably, he had left behind an entire outfit: a sweatshirt, shoes, and a hip bag that would provide investigators with an unprecedented amount of forensic evidence. The sweatshirt was particularly significant. It was a rare item that had only gone on sale 2 months before the murders, with just 130 units sold in the Tokyo area. Despite this limited production run, police have only ever been able to track down 12 of the purchasers. In the pocket of this sweatshirt, investigators found traces of bird droppings, Japanese Zelkova tree leaves, and willow leaves, clues that suggested the killer had spent time in a specific outdoor environment before the murders. The shoes told an equally intriguing story. They were a Korean brand, in a size that was never officially sold in Japan. The salts contained sand that forensic analysis matched to a specific beach near Tokyo. The hip bag was also manufactured in South Korea, and its size indicated that the killer had a waist measurement between 70 and 75 centimeters, suggesting a slim build. Even more remarkably, the bag contained 3 different types of powdered fluorescent dye, the significance of which investigators have never been able to determine. DNA analysis revealed perhaps the most crucial information about the killer's identity. The blood evidence showed that he was male with type A blood, and genetic analysis indicated mixed ancestry. His mother was likely of European descent, possibly from a country near the Mediterranean or Adriatic Sea, while his father was of Asian descent. The Y chromosome analysis was particularly specific. The DNA pattern appears in 1 in 4 or 5 Koreans, 1 in 10 Chinese, and 1 in 13 Japanese. The killer was estimated to be about 170 centimeters tall with a thin build. The investigation that followed became one of the largest in Japanese history. Nearly 280,000 police officers have worked on the case over the past 24 years, receiving more than 16,000 tips from the public. A reward of 20 million yen, approximately $150,000, has been offered for information leading to the killer's arrest. Despite this massive effort and the unprecedented amount of physical evidence, the case remains unsolved. One of the most puzzling aspects of the investigation has been determining the killer's motive. The house showed no signs of forced entry, leading some investigators to theorize that the killer might have been known to the family. However, there was no evidence of robbery. Valuable items were left untouched, and the family's money remained in the house. Some investigators explored the possibility that Mikio had been involved in a dispute with local skateboarders who used a nearby park, as the killer's clothing and estimated age could suggest a young person seeking revenge for noise complaints. More elaborate theories have emerged over the years. Investigative journalist Fumiya Ichihashi spent years researching the case and concluded that the killer was a former South Korean army soldier turned contract killer. Ichihashi believes the motive was related to compensation money the family had received over the expansion of a nearby park, and that the killer was confident he wouldn't be caught because he planned to immediately flee Japan after the murders. This theory gained some credence from the killer's apparent lack of concern about leaving evidence behind. As Ichihashi noted, as the criminal left behind his knives, clothes, bag, fingerprints, palm prints, and footprints without care, I couldn't help but think that he was confident he would not get caught. The theory suggests that the killer was not Japanese, did not live in Japan, and escaped overseas immediately after the crime. Other investigators have focused on the killer's bizarre post-murder behavior. The fact that he spent hours in the house, eating, sleeping, and using the computer suggests either a complete lack of empathy or a psychological break from reality. Some experts have theorized that the killer might have been under the influence of drugs, which would explain both the extreme violence and the strange behavior afterward. The analysis of his fecal matter revealed that he had eaten string beans and sesame seeds the day before the murders, but provided no additional clues about his identity or whereabouts. The case has been hampered by several investigative challenges. The initial response was delayed because it occurred on New Year's Eve, when many detectives were at home with their families. The special investigators at the Tokyo Metropolitan Police were working on other cases, forcing the department to send their reserve team. Some experts believe this delay may have compromised crucial early evidence collection. Perhaps most frustratingly for investigators, the wealth of evidence has not translated into any viable suspects. The DNA and fingerprints have never matched anyone in Japanese databases, and international cooperation has been limited by language barriers and jurisdictional challenges. Former police chief Takeshi Sachida, who worked on the case for years before retiring, continues to visit the victim's grandmother Setsuko and remains convinced that the case can still be solved. The house where the murders occurred was preserved exactly as it was found for nearly 20 years, maintained as a potential crime scene for future investigation. However, the building has deteriorated to the point where police are now considering demolishing it, having preserved all possible evidence from inside. This decision has caused concern among some investigators who worry that new detectives who haven't experienced the crime scene firsthand may not have the same emotional connection to the case. Today, 24 years after the murders, 35 detectives continue to work on the Setagaya case daily. They distribute flyers at train stations each year, hoping that someone will come forward with new information. They display mannequins wearing clothes similar to what the killer wore, and they maintain their appeal for any information that might finally solve this case. The Setagaya family murders represent one of the most paradoxical cases in criminal history, a crime with an overwhelming amount of evidence that has yielded no arrests. The killer left behind his DNA, his fingerprints, his clothes, his murder weapon, and even his bodily waste, yet he remains a ghost, a killer without a face. The case stands as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most evidence can be as baffling as no evidence at all, and that some mysteries persist not because we know too little, but because we know too much without understanding what it all means. For the Miyazawa family, justice remains elusive, but their case continues to haunt investigators and the public alike, a testament to the enduring power of unsolved mysteries to capture our imagination and challenge our understanding of how justice works in the modern world.